Hi there, this is a short 20 to 30 minute video just giving you an overview of privilege escalation, SQL injection and gaining domain admin using those methods from an unauthenticated standpoint. So in my lab I have three servers. I have the domain controller, SQL server and web server. So first off I'll just do a quick map of the environment, or the lab environment shall I say, and see what I can get back using a discovery scan. Now 200 is the Kali machine, 1 is the domain controller, 20 is the web server and 30 is the SQL box. So with those in mind, let's try and see what we get back using some versioning. So we can now say web services, some file shares, domain controllers and SQL servers. And because we know what the IP addresses are available on this network, we can quickly just go through and target those boxes specifically to save us some time. Now this shouldn't take too long, and it should give us back some nice useful information which we can utilize later on. So as we can see, this is all filtered, so those are irrelevant on that box, but we can see this is definitely the SQL box. This is definitely the web services. It also has file shares open, and we can see here that this is definitely the domain controller. We've got the domain name of domain.local and the network's name of demo. So that's all useful information which can be handy later on. So let's first of all dive straight into the web box, because that's always a good endpoint to see if there's any vulnerable applications running on the website. So as we can see here, let me just zoom in a little bit so you've got a better view for those people who may not necessarily. Right, so as we can see here, we've now got ourselves a web form. It's not secured by any password access, so it's very useful to us. And we'll just check that it does indeed filter on surname. Excellent. So what happens if we try some basic SQL injection? So let's just do now these double dashes here. So let me just explain this a little bit more. So this will continue their query of Nolan, and it'll say, or if 99 equals 99, which it does, then give me a result as well. These two dashes are saying comment out anything after this, so if there's additional code in the SQL query, that's ignored. However, you must have a couple of blank spaces afterwards, and to stop it being trimmed by any script, i.e. if you just had it like that, it might get trimmed. I always put a letter in at the end. So we can now see that that is definitely vulnerable to SQL injection, which is absolutely awesome. We can try some different methods of, if we wanted to, like for example, we could append data. So we could say test as given name, surname, sorry, test1 as surname, and we could probably squeeze in test3 as email address, and again not forgetting your comment. And yes, we can see that we have now appended data, so that is a very vulnerable form, and we could actually utilize some tools to gain ourselves a real good foothold on the system. Don't have time today to go through that, but what I can say is look up the word SQL map and look at it. The wizard is probably the best one to use, and we'll quickly just show you that briefly. However, there's so many commands and things you can do with this, it's incredible. A very, very good tool. Put in some dummy data. Now the risk levels, how hard you want it to attack that box, injection difficulty, how much do you want to put it through. I would always suggest, if it's a customer, live customer database and stuff, and you don't want to damage things, go for the lowest you feel is acceptable. For our demo, I'm just going to go for free on both. And as we can see, it's now returned the data from the database, which can be really useful to an attacker. So it's really powerful when you've got data being taken out of a database like that without actual, because yes, we could append data and get a result out there, but what this is doing is using time-based comparison to allow, once it's got those timings, to basically drag out the data. Okay, so what can we utilize now to give ourselves a reverse shell back and get ourselves onto the box, the SQL box, because it's obviously highly vulnerable. And which I didn't show you there, was on the SQL map. It would show you that this SQL service was running as the SA account, the system administrator account. So very, very bad indeed. So what we can do is utilize the XP command shell, which has been around for a long time. We can enable this by just dropping in two configuration options. The first one enables advanced options, which then allows us access to the XP command. We can see both have been successful because there was no error page given. So let's now execute a command. And one command which I am going to use and combine with is my Empire. Empire is a post-exploitation tool. I classify this as exploited now because I'm able to run commands as a shell on this box. So, and it is worth noting, once you've enabled this, it does leave a log in the event log on the SQL box. So it's not undetectable. If you've got good logging set up on the box, it will be picked up. So worth noting. So let's get a stager onto the box. A stager is basically a way of injecting an agent into a box. It gives you the code, the PowerShell's code to run. So first of all, we need to set the listener. So the main one, I've named it main. By default, it's named it as test. So let's now go through and execute that. And we'll just go through and copy that in. And don't forget the 2 dashes at the end to stop any additional code running which might be of a problem to you. Now this is going to hang, but in the background we can see that our agent's now in the box. This will eventually time out, and this will come up with an error page because it's a long running process, because we've created an agent on the box. Once that times out, the PowerShell stager will still remain. No, I don't want to exit. So let's just go to our agents, and we can now see that it's running as a low privileged user. So at this point here, I could probably go through, search for some files on the system which might give me a password, you know, some useful information. But you can also do some checks as well, some priv escalation checks using the power up all checks module. Great module. It'll check all the necessary services and stuff. You know, if there's any vulnerabilities on the system which could be used for privilege escalation, then it will certainly help you with that. So we'll now run it. Now you won't see any output. There's two ways to see output: by reading the log file or going back to the agent, interacting with it, and then we can read the output from there. And we can see that the VM tools service is vulnerable, which is ideal for us. Now I will point out that I have made this vulnerable. Don't panic if you do run VM tools. It is purely for demonstration that I have made this vulnerable. So how could we now utilize that vulnerable service? Well, what we can do is replace the command that service runs at startup with our own one. I don't know what I was typing in there. And we could use the service stager for that I find the service stager the most effective one. It works the most of the time for me. So I'm going to go with that one. Stick with what I know. Set the listener up. We know that the service name is VM Tools. And let's just see if we can get a system shell with it. It is not OPSEC safe because that will leave an event log on the box saying that the service has restarted. However, it will put back the original command that the service runs, and it will ensure that things are left as they were before, but it will unfortunately leave the log files behind. You could potentially use log carving to remove that and get that tidied up. Now execute that now. With a bit of luck, yep, we now have a system shell, hopefully. Yes, we have. So at this point now, we could look to grab the credentials from the box. Now there is a load of credentials modules. The one which I tend to use is the Mimikatz logon passwords. Sorry, lost my trail of thought there, and then typed in the wrong thing. So with the Mimikatz one, we can then set the agent to the system one, which was 1B. Now if you at any point you go, oh, which one was the system one, you can actually type in I think it's list agents, yeah, at any point in the Empire console, so you can see the ones with admin rights are the ones with stars at the beginning. So we can now do set agent to 1B. Tab complete does work, and we can then execute that. Again, go back to agents, interact with 1B, and then we can see the output. Just let that one run through. So we can now utilize this. So let's have a little look through and see. There's no plain text passwords, which is a bit of a shame, but what we can have is the NTLM hash, and it looks like we've got the NTLM hash for the administrator of the domain. So excellent. So let's copy that one out and let's try and break it. So let's first of all store it in a file. So we've now stored that into an admin hash file, and we could probably use John to help us with this now. I would love to show you Hashcat, but I haven't got a graphics card assigned to this virtual machine to use. I always put a space after the equals because it helps me tab complete, and then I remove the space afterwards. Personal preference. And I'm going to run it through the RockU list. Now with Hashcat you can do word mangling and all sorts of other fancy stuff. I'm going to enforce it to be the format of NT because it's not in a PW dump format. It hasn't got the semicolons, sorry, the colons in there, so it won't know what it is. So hopefully I've given that the right command. Okay, and it's now loaded. So if I now go back here and do show and then do admin hash, should have done it. No passwords left to crack. I should have done it. But what we can do is show you the one that I was demoing with as well. That's not doing it either now. It had cracked it to password $1. I don't know why it's not showing, and that's rather annoying. But yes, so we now know that the password is password $1. So now we can, how can we now deploy an agent using Empire. No, go back to the main. Thank you. How can we now deploy an agent to another box and give ourselves domain admin? So let's use module again, and we can then go through lateral movement. There we are, lateral movement, and we've got a load of ones available to us. One I quite like to use is invoke WMI. I love PS remoting. I've done quite a good blog post on how to enable it. However, most environments don't have that enabled, so I tend to rely on WMI being my friend for Windows for this type of work. So let's have a look at the options available. So we need to set the agent. Again, if you're not sure which agent to use, you can do list agents. So set agent. I'm going to go with the system account because that's likely to have access to the domain because it's an authenticated user on the domain. And then what other options do we need to set? Look for the true statements. Computer name, obviously. 192.168.1.1. Oops. And because I am using such large zoom, it's screwing up the formatting. It's normally a lot better than this. So I'm going to spray and pray, as I call it. I'm going to basically hit the whole domain, all three boxes with this. So we now got those in there. We now need to set the username, which we now know is demo /administrator, and then we're going to set the listener. It's because I put a capital S and set listener main, and then set the password. That's password $1, which John kindly cracked for us. And any other things? No. So now we can now go to execute, and with a bit of luck, we should hopefully get some results back. Give it a few moments. So we've now got an agent on the domain controller first, which is good. Let's go back to our agents. So we've now got an agent on the box. Excellent. So we can now go to, we've got another agent. Which one did we get this time? Oops. We've got one on the web box. Excellent. And I think the one on SQL's probably just timed out. So let's interact with the domain controller, BD. Now with once we're interacting with BD, we could now do all sorts of stuff. If I go to help, and I'll show you the agent has the ability to do screenshots. So if you're running this agent in the user context, you could take a screenshot. You could rename it to something more meaningful than a random string. You can look for, there's some Mimikatz shortcuts straight from this one here, Mimikatz. There's ways of injecting, there's just so many things you can migrate and all sorts. The thing which I'm most interested to do is to create myself an admin account. Now there is a module for it. If I go use module, and which one was it? I think it was under miscellaneous, under persistence. This one here. For some reason I keep on having issues with that, and I just get back to, let me just, get back to the main screen and interact, and I'll interact with the domain controller one again. And I don't know, I just always have a bit of an issue with it, so I just tend to issue a shell command. Anything prefixed by shell will run on a command prompt on the box, and I'm just going to use the good old backdoor password 1, and let's go for, I want to add it, and I want to add it to the domain. Excellent. And now I want to add that user to, get my words out, domain admins, domain. Oh, didn't, silly person. Schoolboy error. Forgot to give it what to add. Come on, there we go. So I've now compromised the domain. I've escalated myself all the way up to domain admin. If we go jump over to our domain controller and switch user, backdoor, this is where it won't work. There we go. We've now successfully logged on and compromised the domain as a full domain admin. Oops, typo. And away we go. So if we now look at the users, we've got our backdoor user there who is a member of domain admins. So that was a very quick demonstration. It's coming up to 22 minutes of escalating, and I hope you enjoyed it. Any questions, please reach out to me. And yeah, thanks very much for watching. Cheers.